Morning, everyone. This is the August 8th meeting of the Dunn County Planning Resource and Development Committee. Call the meeting to order. Looks like all members of the committee are here. Approval of the minutes from July 25th. Anyone?
I move approval, Mr.
Supervisor
Chairman.
Morehouse moves. Supervisor York seconds. Any discussion or corrections? All in favor of the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have any public comments today? Anybody send anything in, Tom? Or anyone here? Okay. Then we'll go to the public hearing. We have a rezone request from GA to R1 from Tina Yang. I'll ask, again, just sort of the housekeeping procedure. We'll ask staff to verify the posting of the proper notice, legal notice, and ask staff to give a report and review of the recommendation. Take any questions from the committee, any questions from the or comments from the public. This will be the only opportunity for the public to comment publicly for the record on this issue. And then we'll have discussion and adjourn the public hearing and if appropriate, take action. So with that, Ann, could you confirm the notice and give us your summary?
Per chapter 985 Wisconsin statutes,
We do have some
the Dunn County News.
for the hearing. Okay. Go ahead, sorry.
Notices were published in the Dunn County News on both July 19th and July 26th, 2023 to establish the public hearing today. Also, neighbors within 300 feet of the subject property were noticed via first-class mail. Furthermore, county supervisors, state agencies, and federal agencies were notified through electronic mail. And the town of Menominee was provided a notice of public hearing and formal request for recommendation. So the rezone request is from Tina Yang. She is petitioning to rezone her 20-acre parcel in the town of Menominee from general ag to residential 1. The area has seen a shift toward residential development, but it's still remaining somewhat agricultural. The town of Menominee's comprehensive plan supports ag use and future residential development near the subject parcel. We've also found that rezoning to R1 would align with the county development plans and permit more subdividing options. The proposed single-family housing use is permitted in both zones, but general ag does limit the residential density. And overall, staff find the rezoning and proposed use consistent with the existing plan for development and has no concerns with spot zoning. The subject parcel has historically served as productive forest land. It contains a single-family residence, and it's been utilized for some farming activities. It's important to note that this is not within shoreland or floodplain, and that the Dunn County Comprehensive Plan indicates the soils found on the subject property as low productivity. So the area surrounding the subject parcel has experienced a shift toward residential development while maintaining agricultural characteristics. Although most nearby parcels are zoned as general agriculture, there are some to the northwest zoned as residential 1. The town of Menominee's comprehensive plan designates the area as general ag land use. However, the preferred land use map does show a bubble of future residential R1 development within a quarter mile of the subject parcel. This indicates that rezoning the parcel from general agriculture to R1 would align with the county's future development plans. We have not received confirmation from the town about this. The proposed use of the land as a single-family housing is permitted in both general ag and residential one. However, under the current general ag zoning, residential development is limited to one residential parcel per 8 acres. With the subject parcel being 20 acres, this would allow for only 2 lots. Rezoning to R1 would enable the applicant to further subdivide the property, allowing each of her children to have their home lot with a single-family residence. After considering the applicant's petition, the town of Menominee's preferred land use map, and the provided analysis, staff concluded that the proposed rezoning and use of the subject parcel aligns with both the existing and planned future development in the neighborhood and Dunn County. As a result, concerns regarding spot zoning are not applicable. So based on the analysis and findings, staff are supportive of the applicant's request to rezone to residential 1. Following the close of public testimony and deliberations regarding conclusions with respect to the review criteria included in this staff report, the PRND will need to make a recommendation to the County Board of Supervisors for approval or denial. And that is the end of the report.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions of staff? Supervisor Bjork.
Thank you. So if we went to R1,
Again, remember, stick close to the mic or maybe pull it closer to you, Gary.
I don't want to get too close. Okay, so if we went to R1, couldn't it possibly in the future be like 20 lots there? Because it isn't the county down to 1 lot. I'm not sure what Menominee is, or 1 acre per lot.
So it could technically be more than that if it's in R1. I'm trying to think of what, it could not be 20 unless they did a plat. I think this might be a Tom question.
Yeah.
Sure, I can try and answer that. So if it were zoned to R1, minimum lot size would be 1 acre. They could do four divisions on this 20 acres in a 5-year period by certified survey map. If they want to do more than that all at once, it would trigger a plat. And then depending on how big of the lot sizes were, they could either do a county plat or a state plat. But eventually you can't just take the 20 acres and say, well, minimum lot size is 1 acre, we'll end up with 20, because it doesn't work that way. Frontage becomes an issue. How are you going to access all these lots? If you start running a road in there, now you're going to reduce the acreage. So you're not going to end up with 20 new lots there. What that number would be, I don't know. It might be more like 12, something like that. They could either do a phased approach by CSMs every 5 years, or they could do it all at once with a plat.
Okay. Thank you.
And could you show us the property on the map? Is it?
So the photo on screen here is the 2020 aerial or ortho photo. The red square is
Okay.
the subject parcel. Would you like to see the zoning?
That's
Okay.
good. And so just as a town, just not considered this, or are they taking no position on it?
I just haven't heard anything from the town. They were sent a request from our office in July
Okay.
requesting their opinion, but I haven't heard back.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I see that it's on the agenda for the meeting tonight at the town of Menominee at 6 p.m.
Okay. Any other comments or questions at this point? So we'll have further discussion after public comment perhaps too. So we have 3 people who would like to have signed up for public comment. I'm going to ask you to come up to the microphone up, podium up there and turn on the little button that's got the speaker on it. And then I'll swear you in real briefly, and then I give you your name and address and provide your testimony if you want to. So the first one I have on the list is Paul Booth. Name and address, Paul.
N 5698 370th Street.
And raise your right hand. You swear your testimony today will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, will all the landowners' taxes and all that stuff be going up also? Due to the road improvement and all that other type of stuff?
Yep,
As far as I know, there is not a road improvement proposed.
Well, there's gonna have to be because it's a dangerous driveway right now where they will be putting driveways in. There's limited sight distance to the west. There's gonna be have to be a lot of road repair before they start putting 20 houses in there.
Can I just note
Yeah.
one thing? So in the applicant's proposal, it is proposed to be split into 3 5-acre lots,
Okay. Three,
not 12. And it's
okay,
sure her intent for applying, and this is just in the application, was so that she could sell those lots to her children so they could build their houses. Now, that's what's in the application.
okay,
You know, if it's rezoned, they,
Check.
have other options, but that's
Right.
the intent behind this rezone.
yeah, I never had any of that information
it's
on
okay.
mine, but it's like,
yeah,
No, it's a valid concern.
yeah, and the road is very dangerous. If any guys want to go look at it, it's very limited site and, see, I was under the understanding that it was one house per 5 acres, but it's one per 3 or 8 acres.
I can't speak to what the Menominee minimum lot size is,
Okay,
but for Dunn County, it would be 1 acre.
okay, in residential one.
One, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, it's. And of course, I own the west side of there, and then my dad owns the north side, and we do have beef cows, and the fences are not the greatest because it was all woods and stuff, and that's all gonna have to get taken care of. I don't know if that's my responsibility now, or it's a 50-50 deal like it always used to be, or.
do you have the answer to that? Chase, ask Chase to comment on that.
I guess as far as I know, fence law is still up to the township for those discussions and there is I forget what statute it is in state statute, but I don't really deal with that too much, but my understanding is that it's a township.
Okay,
There's a township issue.
right, okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just concerned about my cattle because of course I got a bull in there all summer and you get a lot of people around screaming and stuff. It's gonna, where it used to be all in pine trees, you couldn't see nobody or nothing, but that's another main concern I have, I guess, because I'm right alongside of all that.
Sure.
And yeah, I sure don't want a lawsuit or something, if somebody gets hurt. Everybody knows that. But, I guess that's about all I really have at this point, but
Okay, does the committee have any questions of Mr. Puss? So if there were future development, and which is not the plan right now, that would have to conform with all of the various regulations with regard to driveways and access and all that, and that would be
right,
subject to a whole nother process of approval that
okay,
may never happen if it's not developed.
right.
But your concern is this change in land use compatible with agricultural use, nearby adjacent agricultural use?
Yes,
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
guys, leave this on.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Uh. Paul Booth. Paul? Really? Ron Booth. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Can you go up there?
You don't hear it.
Okay, can you,
Paul covered what
you want to say?
Yeah,
Okay, all right, that's fine then.
is that?
Yeah,
That's
that's
what-
perfectly fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we got the point. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Then Lisa Keys. Again, name and address.
Lisa Kais, E3779 550th Avenue. So we
I
live,
said before you go on,
Oh,
I have to swear you in, I'm
oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry,
Do you swear your testimony there will be the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So me and my husband's property is east of, so kind of where the red circle is, where you see the cropland on the bottom. That is our land, and then we live kind of down east of, the Vangs, resident. I have really no objection to anyone building a home. But when you start lotting, it's a known fact, it's gonna grow. It was a farming community, and it's very, very sad to see that go. We have beyond, Paul and Ron's place to the west, we have two more developments, and they're growing. And we're losing land, we're losing wildlife. Our road that we live on, 550th Avenue, is heavily traveled already. And with the increase of traffic and more people, we're just gonna get more. We rent, like I said, the cropland here, we rent that out to a neighbor who has big equipment, and he will be traveling, he's going to travel the north and the south, right in front of the Yang residence, where their home is now. And they come in, the tractors and the sprayers and the combines, they come in, right across the road. And if you're going to be putting more children, we all have children, we know they get in the road. It's hard, you've got big equipment. And I don't know where they're planning on putting a driveway in, but like Paul said, if it's going to be off of 550th Avenue at the, I guess on the bottom left corner, that is 550th and 370th. That corner goes down. And it's a bad corner. It's a bad hill, because if they're going to be pulling out, people are going to be flying over that hill. They're not going to be able to see them. So then it would make sense that they're going to make the driveway come in down 370th, which is basically, it's a dead end road. And that's where, the farm equipment is coming in. It's not, like I said, I have nothing against the Vang family. I have nothing against building a house. But it's this lotting and, more developments coming in.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does the committee have any questions? Yes, Mike.
Thank you very much for coming in. Did you hear about this committee from the county and the town?
We received a letter in the mail
From,
from the Planning and Zoning Committee.
okay, but nothing from the town of Menominee?
No. And I did want to speak on that. I mean, I'm not defending the town of why they haven't, but I know that our town chairman just passed away on Sunday. So I don't know if he has been ill or what, but I just heard of that, but I'm not making any excuses.
Yeah, for the rest of the people, the former town chairman Frank passed away Sunday night. Kent Jackson, who spoke at, I think, our last meeting, is the town chairman now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Chairman, may I?
Supervisor Morehouse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wonder if you could pull up this map that shows the R1 proximity. Okay, I was gonna ask Ms. Keys if she could speak to what the density is in the R1 adjacent areas. And now I can see it.
Oh, okay.
Supervisor Burke.
Thank you, sir. And just a comment on the fencing. I'm pretty sure it's a state law on fencing that is 50-50. So I would hope that the Vangs would know that even though they don't own cattle, they're still responsible for 50% of the land, you know,
Right.
divided like that. Because had situations and I've got some stuff at home that tells about the state law for fencing, but I think it's not township. I think it's state like law on fencing, what the restrictions are and what your obligations are.
I confirmed it is state statute, chapter 90. It is a shared responsibility. But my understanding is that if there is a deliberation or concern about it, then that's when it comes back to the township.
Type
Right,
you
right.
know, to-
Yeah.
And my only other concern would be that I'd like to hear from the town first before we vote on it. You know, at least get their opinion, because it's their plan. You know, so
Okay,
thank you.
anyone else? All right, thank you very much, Lisa. Are there any other comments that anyone on the committee would like to make for the record before we close the public hearing?
Thank you very much. I agree. I would like to hear from the township first. The different issues that we've heard right here, especially the road. Yeah. So,
Okay. Anyone else? All right, then we'll close the public hearing. Thank everyone who,
Tom, before we close it?
Yeah.
Just a technicality. We could keep the public hearing open until next time. Have we?
good point. That is a good point. Thank you, Mike. So we have two options. We can close public hearing and deliberate on the item and defer it if we wanted to, I suppose, but we could also just keep the hearing open until the next meeting, at which time we could have heard from the town board. Anyone want to have any feelings one way or the other on that?
I think it makes sense to leave it open.
Okay,
It seems like a thorny issue and leaving it open for comments in a couple weeks makes sense to me.
anyone else? Any objections to keeping the hearing open and waiting until we hear from the, okay. So when would the next board meeting be, the date, a committee meeting? 22nd. So then what I will suggest is that based on this, that we leave the public hearing open until August 22nd. And the committee has a chance an opportunity by that time to hear the decision of or the opinions from the town board and allow that to factor into our discussions. So any objection to that? All right, then that's what we'll do. Thank you. You guys understand that? We'll go on to staff reports, register of deeds, monthly report. Heather?
Good morning. I don't have anything to add, although we do have a vacancy in our office due to a retirement. So that is, the next step is filling that position. So for the month of July, we were short one staff person. Small office makes a difference.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, are you involved in that hiring of another person, or is that through HR or accommodation therein?
Yep, definitely a combination. It's been 8 years since we've had to hire in our office, but yep, with the help of HR, they have the process pretty down pat. So I'm working with Caitlin and HR for the hiring.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Environmental Services Department monthly division reports. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Good morning. I don't have anything to add. Report is pretty short, but I'd certainly entertain any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Who's next?
That'd be me.
Ann, yeah. Mhm.
Um, so I guess I don't have a whole lot to add. We've been pretty busy working on some comprehensive plan work, and Tammy has a report for that today. If anybody has any questions.
Mr.
Any-
Chairman.
Yes,
Because I own land in the town of Grant, I'm kind of curious what that 11 acres was that was taken out of ag. If you could explain a little bit about it, I'd appreciate it.
So I believe so we've had quite a few applications for these non-farm parcels in the town of Grant. I believe this was the Krieger family, Ronald Krieger, if you're familiar. They essentially wanted to separate their home from the rest of the acreage so their son could take over the farming operation. And that's why they did the 11 acres. Mhm.
okay, what else?
And just, I'm confused. So why is that not a rezone that comes through this committee? What's different about that?
So these non-farm this whole procedure comes from DAT cap requirements for farmland preservation. So they have certain standards that we need to evaluate before approving these, and they go as a special exception or a conditional use. They're not rezoned technically. They stay with the zoning designation they had before. It's just essentially a change of use of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
And could you elaborate on point number 2 in your report, Mr. Stoffer's permit modification request returned to the BOA?
Sure. So Mr. Stoffer, I think we might have talked about this a little bit, but he came to the BOA. He had an existing special exception for a wedding barn. This was a few years ago. He came back, he wanted to modify some conditions of that permit. So one of the things he was asking was to increase the capacity from 300 to 500 persons per event. So this went back to the BOA last month. Their decision was essentially to conditionally approve it, with one of the conditions being a comprehensive plan review process. So they asked him to create a more detailed event plan for these larger, potentially 500 person events. Part of that review process involves Mr. Stoffer creating this event plan. In it, he would kind of describe how he would manage traffic, manage, the number of guests, sanitary needs, water, noise, fire safety, things like that. And we gave him a list of the departments to work with for that. And then I also put together kind of some things that he could use to review and create that comprehensive plan. So right now, we're just kind of waiting and seeing, what these departments will think of the event plan and if they'll approve it. If they approve it, then essentially he is approved to have up to 500 guests per event for the wedding barn.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Land conservation, Chase.
So I have a report in the packet. Tom's pulling it up right now. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them regarding that. If not, if you would allow, I have Tina Barone here today, our conservation planner within our department. I know you've heard a lot about farm-led watersheds recently, but one of the later agenda items for today is looking at renewing the memorandum of understandings for both farm-leds. I think it's an opportunity to dive a little deeper into that topic, and then also allow a little bit more interaction with other staff within our department than instead of me talking all the time. So I guess if you have any questions about the written report, otherwise, if you would allow Tina to give a short presentation, I'd appreciate it.
Sounds good. Tina.
All right, I will share my screen here quick. All right, Tina, you're on.
All right, so my name is Tina Barone, like Chase said, I work with two different producer-led watershed groups in Dunn County. We've got the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers, which is over by kind of Colfax area. And then we've got the Hay River Farmer-led Watershed Council. And that one's kind of a bigger area, more to the west. So I kind of just wanted to cover quickly, what is a producer-led watershed group? Because maybe people don't know that. It has to be at least 5 farmers, and usually they've come together, with certain concerns and certain goals that they want to work toward. They do have to have some type of a collaborator. In our case, it's County Land Conservation. And then, why would we want to do these producer-led watershed groups? I mean, it takes staff time, but we're seeing a lot of benefits from them. Farmers learning from farmers, and also the general public learning from farmers, what they're doing. Also, we bring in special speakers. We had one from the University of Illinois that came last December. It does increase conservation practices. We see a lot of no-till cover crops, and then something we call planting green, which we'll kind of see later in my slideshow. But also, we're building a sense of community, not only the farmers themselves, talking to other farmers, but also, Red Cedar Conservation Farmers has had some interaction with the heat group and the community in general, just letting people know what they're doing. And it kind of is doing a lot of benefits. And through this program, we do get grant money, so we can provide incentive payments to farmers so they can try new things without having to take on all of the financial risk themselves. And these are the two farmer-led groups I talked about before. They are funded in a little bit different way. So the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers, we get a grant from DADCAP each year. We can apply for up to $40,000. This year, we only got $24,400, but we hopefully we'll get more next year. And then we also applied for a nitrogen optimization pilot program grant, and that grant was about $150,000, and that was for research. So that doesn't go to the farmers as much. It's mostly research that we're doing. That group is kind of a newer group. It's only been around since 2019, versus the Hay River group, which has been around quite a while, since 2013. And that one's a little bit different from Red Cedar Conservation Farmers, in that they get not only that DACAP producer-led grant, but they get funds through the McKnight grant. And we do that because we have another collaborator on this group, Tara Dunn from Wisconsin Farmers Union. So the two groups are a little bit different. In my presentation here, I'll probably mostly focus on Red Cedar Conservation Farmers. That's just because the Hay River group's new to me. I only took it over at the beginning of this year, so I'm still getting to know them, and they're getting to know me. So we're going to figure things out this year, but mostly it'll be Red Cedar Conservation Farmers we'll talk about. So with Red Cedar Conservation Farmers, this is last year's successes. We put in buffers. We planted green, which again, I'll talk about that later and make that make sense. We planted a lot of cover crops and no-till. And then if you look at the bottom, those are the reductions we're seeing. So basically I take what they've installed and then I model them out. So we've kept 2,000 tons of soil on the field instead of letting it wash off. We've saved 6,342 pounds according to my modeling, which, it's modeling. So it's not exact, but we kept that on the field rather than letting that get into our streams. And then the greenhouse gas emissions, that's kind of a new one I've been trying to play with this year. That's a little over 1,000 tons of CO2. Then just kind of for the people who aren't really familiar with ag, this is a picture of no-till. On the left, you'll see the no-till trench. So just keep in mind when we talk about no-till, it doesn't mean no ground disturbance. We have to somehow get that seed in the ground. So that's showing after the planter went through and planted. And on the right, we're looking at that no-till crop coming up through last year's residue. And then Chase pushes play maybe.
It's supposed to be a video of your another county board supervisor planting no-till with his tractor, but I don't know if it's gonna want to play. Okay, we'll skip over it. It's just fine. And then cover crops. We plant a lot of cover crops through both farmer-led groups. On the left, you can see the corn stalk sticking up and you can see how green it is. That's all from a cover crop that was planted. I think this was actually taken, yeah, I say in November. So that's pretty good growth. We don't always see that much green. And then on the right, finally, I have, built up the anticipation. That is a picture of planting green. So basically what planting green is when you have a growing green cover crop in the spring, no tilling directly into it. And then after that corn plant generally has started coming up, we spray off that cover crop. And you can see all of that rye tan color sitting on the ground. So it provides a lot of ground cover. Through Red Cedar Conservation Farmers Nitrogen Optimization Pilot Program funding, we're doing 2 different trials. We're looking at how cover crop terminating it early before planting or late after planting affects how much commercial nitrogen application needs to be applied to the field. And then the second trial we're looking at is, are we going to better utilize our manure if we lightly incorporate it with tillage? Is that going to result in less synthetic nitrogen having to be applied to the field? These are things we looked into specifically because of some of the conversations that our farmers in the group have had. So we're looking at trying to answer some questions that they can use themselves. These are just some pictures showing our sign that's up off of 64, just outside Sand Creek. And then some pictures showing collecting plant samples and soil samples. I've been quite busy in the field working on sampling, but it's pretty interesting. This is a drone picture we just received not too long ago. And these are showing the different plots. So we looked at cover crop termination. So we terminated early before planting, and then the other one was late after planting. And 4 different nitrogen rates were used. So 0 nitrogen was actually not truly 0. There's a little bit of nitrogen in the starter, but it's only a few pounds. And then 1 is looking at about 75 pounds of nitrogen added. 2 is 150 pounds added, and 3 is 225 pounds added. For reference, the rest of the field, I believe, is all 150 pounds of N. So you can kind of see the different yellowing where we've got no nitrogen, but otherwise we're looking at some variation, but it's not quite what we thought we might see. So it'll be interesting once we harvest and we can get that yield data to see how that all translates us out. So also RCCF provides funding so land conservation can collect water samples in their watershed so that we can look at, long-term trends for those streams. What are we looking at for phosphorus levels, things like that. And then Red Cedar Conservation Farmers earlier this year got a pretty special visitor. We got to host the governor at Breezy Haven Farms. And talk to him about producer-led watersheds and the grants and the nitrogen optimization pilot program grant. So that's pretty exciting. If you want more information, I do have information on the Dunn County website. And there's also information on DACAP's website about the producer-led grants and then about the commercial nitrogen optimization pilot program.
Thank you, Tina. Any questions?
No, but Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you for that, Tina. I did go to the Lakes REU presentation last Thursday, and I was really pleased to see in one of the research projects that the most trusted source of information for those surveyed farmers largely was county conservation. So thanks to you. I specifically asked a follow-up question about that. So good job.
Thank you. Carrie.
Thank you, Tom. Did you see any negative of the cover crops? Taking all the moisture out this spring and the seed not germinating?
So we have seen some issues with cover crops. Generally, when we're looking at issues with not, getting the actual crop to grow afterward, especially when planting green, is because of the depth of the seed, it appears. So we're not getting that seed deep enough. And from what I've seen so far, that's mostly what we're seeing. But this year was a little bit different with the cover crops because they were stealing some moisture and we were really dry. So we had a field day where we looked at that same field we saw the drone picture of, and the corn didn't look very good in the later terminated cover crop plot. However, when we look at the drone picture, the late versus the early terminated, even when we looked at the zero, didn't look all that much different. So I think early on, it did take some of that moisture, but it appears, granted, I don't have all the data to back it up yet, but it appears like that corn did rebound. And because maybe it would have been different if you wouldn't have started getting rains when we needed to, but it seems that it kind of rebounded, and it'll be interesting to see the yield and if it actually, even though the color looks good, if the yield actually follows and it did rebound or it didn't. We're hoping to have an educational event where we present what we found in our first year of research, because it is a 2-year research. But we're hoping to do some type of an educational event in like January, February. And we'll make sure you guys know about when that event is.
Anything else? Just one question on my part. You mentioned you were trying to quantify the carbon footprint. How do you do that?
So I used, Chase and I attended a training, and I used Comet Farm, I think it's called. And so I put in the different practices and it kind of pops out what you have for that. But it's only some of the practices that the farmer led puts in could be quantified in there.
I would say, just to add to that, Comet Farm and Comet Planner are those modeling tools, and they're recognized nationwide, not even, maybe even broader than that, but they're used pretty extensively lately to try to establish the carbon emissions and the crediting that a farm might have. So.
Yeah, I want to also thank staff for, I mean, this is sort of extra work. And it's really to the credit of our county, but also all the comments you made about the benefits of it. I think their committee broadly supports it and very much appreciates the extra time you put in on it. Thanks a lot. Anything else? Okay, good job, everyone. Let's see, I'm in charge of this meeting. Okay. Item C, 6C, comprehensive plan review, implementation items from current plan.
So we have Tammy presenting this today. She's just getting everything ready. Share her screen.
Good morning. I included, if you see in the packet, I guess my goal here with the comprehensive planning project is to kind of be a cumulative of presentations. So instead of trying to go back to what we talked about before, I'll include the previous presentation, just try to build upon this. And so I don't know if the committee had a chance to review what was presented last time. I could almost jump ahead on the presentation and just talk about this time frame and schedule to where we are. So this is kind of just a check-in. The goal here would be, whoops. I don't know how to get rid of this. Sorry, something's popped up on my screen, sorry. Yeah. Mouse, there, perfect. So ultimately today, I guess the goal would be is just to review implementation items. So I included what was in the original comprehensive plan, several pages of what was going to be covered, right? So short-term goals, long-term goals with a comprehensive plan, which included, for example, ordinance work, updating farmland preservation plans, addressing housing issues, barriers within our subdivision regulations. So it's kind of a check-in to say, are we on track? Are we doing what we want to do? And where do we need to improve? I look at the implementation plan and there's reference to certain documents. And I can't really find any background to them. And so that's where I'm hoping some of the committee members can, bring up, say, yes, that was a project we worked on. It's no longer relevant. So I'm kind of jumping ahead to that item, but just first kind of a bigger picture, where we're at today is just, we'll kind of dive into some of that. Hopefully the committee is up to it. And then next committee meeting, we did receive some items from Cedar Core. We'd like to digest them and then share those findings with the committee next committee meeting. And then just kind of keep on track as far as what are our goals going forward and develop the public participation plan. And then hopefully by late fall, kick off this rewrite of our comprehensive plan. That seems fair? Okay. So I'm going to go back to this implementation element. And I included this up as a supplement in our packet. And it's kind of it's an important document, right? This is a document that really helps shape what we're doing as staff, what's going to be forthcoming for the committee to the county board. But also it's an important element for us to look for future grant opportunities, funding, those cooperative efforts that help us grow with our efforts with intergovernmental, with our towns. So for example, I'm gonna jump to, well, we can do stormwater management. I'm gonna bring that one item up as an topic. There's an element in here that talks about stormwater management and achieve consistency between jurisdictions, right? So let's try to minimize conflict and oh, it's not. Whoops. Stop sharing. Oh, I gotta learn this. That's kind of there. I apologize. I'll learn these tricks here. So create multi-jurisdictional planning areas is an example. Stormwater management. So that one idea is that let's try to eliminate duplicating review efforts. And so right now, Wisconsin DNR is providing that level of work. Is that something we still want to continue to do? Does the county see more need to develop stormwater regulations locally and focus on an area that maybe is a gap in stormwater review as an example? So those are some items that I'd like to really check in with the committee on, because ultimately this document, so I'm kind of really jumping ahead to what our end game is. Like this document will be the future of the next 10 years, 20 years for staff workload. And what was done before, what was identified before, and how can we improve upon that? Where do we want to, fix the gaps, but also probably even provide better guidance? I sometimes these statements of don't give enough strength to what we need to be doing. It doesn't help us write grants, for example, it doesn't identify the grants that we need to be focusing on. Another item, in this implementation plan, when I said I was jumping ahead, is it referenced environmental corridors and this Riverway corridor plan. And the best as I can find is something was referenced in 2003 that was done maybe 2 meetings on this Riverway corridor plan. And I don't know if that rings a bell to the committee. What was the goal of this plan? So that's where it's really just start taking these items and let's put them either, can we remove them off of the plan? Do we need to revisit these topics? And then hopefully going forward, decide, whether do we need to expand upon the history of that? So if I research Riverway in our comprehensive plan, it comes up twice and it's only in the implementation section. Right, that's an example of we don't want to have an item like that in an implementation was not discussed in the plan. It's not discussed in land and water plan. It's not discussed in farmland preservation plan. So what was the goal there? And that's just one element here. And I don't know how to, again, best tackle this implementation section and what's going to be best for the committee outside of just setting this in front of you and what I would envision probably in the future is we'll take each section as we go through it and tackle each item. But I thought at least for now, you'll have this. I'll have a working version of this for the committee to look at and maybe take some time to look it over. Say, yes, we really did work on these items. These items are still important. Again, here, the very first one under housing. Right, this is relevant today because we have the housing study and recommendations from that. So it says remove affordable housing obstacles. Well, what does that mean? So we need action items in our implementation plan to really help enforce future staff. If I'm not here, Chase isn't here, what does that really mean in the future? And also, obviously for committee members, county board, it supports everyone from the bottom up and top down. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the environmental corridors and it does ring a bell.
Okay.
But I know that there was a point in time when that was a hot topic, an environmental, and you probably were that too, but I don't think it was, we were concerned about the caribou migration through Dunn County. So, but I can't remember exactly how detailed we got about it. So, yeah, good point.
Mhm. And Dunn County is beautiful, right? We have a very beautiful county here. And I think it's just this hidden treasure. And those environmental corridors are critical, right? So when we look at growth areas and it's not just agriculture, right? It is those environmental corridors. And how are we protecting and making these, resources connected?
Right. I think how do you get to protecting the character of the countryside? And what is the rural character that the citizens want in their county? And then what are the most important things to protect that?
Mhm.
And what you just said is true. All those things are true, but maybe it's kind of clumsy how we have them in there now.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to challenge the committee and bring our planning skill set to you too, to help come up with some clear action items.
Sure.
Right, so what does protection look like? Because we also know we need the growth. We need to plan for these growth. So how does environmental corridor protection align and rural character, right, align with housing needs
Mhm.
and the demand for additional lots?
So what does rural character mean? Does it mean just agriculture or just natural areas, or does it involve other aspects too, potentially?
Correct, yeah.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? So, going up from here, there was an item, where am I? I'm in the implementation element short term. Develop consistency regarding the vision for Dunn County. Compare local visions and the Dunn County community vision with the county's guiding change to meet local community vision. Excuse me, I don't know what that is. Do we have this?
Kind of. I would say, when I went through historic documents, when the kickoff meetings with the different towns, the county here in surveys, right? So typically, what does that vision look like? It's usually through surveys, work that was done. And as we look at, survey work that's done with other counties following up as, hey, we're going to redo our comp plan. What does everyone want? Across the board, rural character comes up, right? I mean, it's came up before. Other counties are seeing the same kind of response. So again, what does that vision look like? And that would be, I think, a great work session for us to, pull up, here's what other, what was said before. Is that still valid today? And I'm willing to bet it's going to say the rural character. And how do we preserve that? What does that look like? Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
After I went through this a couple of times before coming to the meeting, I really had to go back and look, so I don't know how much the rest of you remember about a comp plan, or if you've had it, but implementation is actually the very last step.
It
Right.
is.
So there are 9 elements,
Yeah.
and the first 8 give us information. Okay, and that's kind of what you were referring to. You said, well, here's this implementation thing, but you couldn't go back up in any of those 8 elements and find the basis for it.
Correct.
Okay. So next time you'll tell us how much of those first 8 elements that Red Cedar gave us, huh?
I certainly can. Yep. And so that's where I'm doing this backwards, right? I'm jumping to the end and say, this is what the end looked like last time. Are we going to end up here again? Or how do we want to end up? And so it's going to now have to build upon what we know up to this point. So I can focus on those, individual elements. But I also envision the public participation plan would be that, probably in 2 meetings from now, where we develop how we're going to get that content. Right. So we do have some work from Cedar Core. And after we review that work, decide, is this enough for us to come up with these items, or do we need to go back out to the towns and gather more information? Let's
So-
get their vision.
For example, one of the elements is housing, and we've just had this huge study. We probably wouldn't need to do anything.
Correct.
Okay, so we could make decisions on, like you having to look down or implementation and something like that. And that's what
Absolutely.
we'll be bringing little by little. Okay, I just kind of wanted to get a little better handle on what it is, and it makes a lot of sense rather than trying to go and redo everything in the first 8 elements and say, oh, so, yeah, good way to go about it.
It's kind of a good check-in, and that's where I think capitalizing on the knowledge of our committee and the history, and the work that's already been done. So the housing project, I think, is going to be perfect for us to start on and put in here, because it's real for us right now. And it's something we can reflect. And if you guys recall it, in 2020 is when the contract originally kicked off with Cedar Core, and there were some population numbers. And that was the initial start to this housing element that was looked at by the committee. And I feel like the housing study really is the content that we need. We don't necessarily need housing projections in a comp plan. Right? I mean, it's, what does that mean? How are we going to handle these people? Where are they going to go? And what does that look like? Or are we going to say our walls are built because we want to keep rural character? Or what does that look like for extraterritorial zoning? Sewer districts? I think those are the big areas that we need to be focusing on.
So, what do you need us to focus on in preparation for the next discussion?
So I would encourage just going through this implementation section. And if you have thoughts, go through these different, and especially those who are in tune with the housing study, for example, maybe that's fresh in everyone's mind is look at these housing recommendations in the current plan. What does that mean to the committee today? And so so we can have a check-in on maybe these housing items next committee meeting.
All right.
And then we'll also have an update on the additional information from Cedar Core. If that seems fair enough. If that's too much, we can certainly,
How much information do we have from Cedar Corp? I can't remember. So,
we just got
Oh, you did?
one of
Oh,
our
okay.
deliverables, and so theirs was, we requested them to do a trends analysis, basically what has changed in land use since the previous comp plan. So we just got that information, and I'll be summarizing and providing that
Okay.
to the
All right,
committee.
great.
So we'll revisit this housing item and update from Cedar Core next meeting.
Any questions from anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sounds good. Number 9, action on the Red Cedar Conservation Farmers Producer-Led Watershed Grant, MOA, MOU.
So these are memorandums of understanding, that basically the county, with land and water conservation being kind of the main collaborator, I guess. And Chase serves that role for the signature. But these are just setting up what each party's responsibilities are, so that we can apply for our DAG cap grant. It clearly identifies to DAG cap what our roles and responsibilities are and what the farmers' roles and responsibilities are. So we did, I think, one back in 2021 for each of the groups at that point. So this is just renewing that memorandum of understanding.
Any questions?
I would just add that, I signed this, as part of being the applications for the grant, but Tina does all the work, so.
Understood. So let's take, it may be valuable to the grant process to approve each of these separately. So is there a motion on the Red Cedar Conservation MOU?
Move approval of the Red Cedar Conservation MOU.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Oh, okay. And review on the Hay River Producer Grant. Is there a motion?
Supervisor Kinnear moves to approve
Is
it.
there a second?
I'll second.
Barrier seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Both
And just
MOUs
one
are
question.
approved. Yep.
Now, does the county staff get any kind of money for facilitating these at all, or is that just part of the grant fund? Because it's taking time from your like duties.
So no, we don't get any specific staff dollars out of the grant. I think the way it's been viewed, I think still today is being viewed, is that it's a relationship building. There's a lot of other value that comes along with it. We are doing other things with those producers that are also our obligation within the county, such as our Chapter 10 Ag Performance Standard Ordinance, things like that. So unfortunately, we are not getting staff dollars to support that, but I think there's other values that we do tend to weigh pretty heavily on it right now. That's why we continue to participate in it.
So could we say that you think of it as part of your job? Job description?
Part of our job.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, in a way, it's sort of an experiment. It's moving forward to redefining the job in a lot of ways to the more inclusive and collaborative model, which is the future, hopefully. I neglected to do item number 7, which is to review and set the committee schedule for the remainder of 2023. We did modify our summer schedule because Monica had was not teaching or just at this time, but you know, I know your schedule in the fall is it set? No, you start pretty soon, so.
Yeah. Let's see here. So starting September 12th, looks like. I guess the first day of classes is September 6th. I guess it's on the microphone. So yeah, my first day of classes is September 6th. So starting then, I won't be able to do the.
So Tuesdays don't work after that.
Correct.
Okay. So starting in September, we need to change our schedule. There was some during the past year, we were on Monday mornings at 8:30. We could do 8 o'clock on Monday mornings and get it out of the way sooner. No?
Why not?
What do you think? Any suggestions from staff or committee as to? I mean, that seems like one of the problems with 8:30 on Monday is that's the start of your work week. And we're sort of saying to you, wait up to two and a half hours before you can get started on anything. Does the committee have any suggestions? We could go back to the Monday, 8:30, or we could consider a different time.
What does staff think?
So just speaking for myself, we do have these meetings twice a month. The prep time that we have to get ready for these meetings is a little small window typically. Having it start on Monday was difficult for me because it was nice to have that, you know, this is when the items are due, this is when your staff reports are due. Monday kind of allowed us like an extra, like, you have this day to prepare. So morning for me, Monday that's a hard one for me. Willing to do it. I'm here on Mondays at 8 a.m. regardless of if I'm going to a meeting or not. That's my only struggle. I guess that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I would just concur with Ann too. I mean, just the timing of everything, trying to get things, as soon as we're finished with this meeting today, I'm already planning for the next meeting and then, you know, so I agree. I think other things to consider would be other meetings that are already scheduled, you know, on the public meeting calendar for other committee meetings and trying to fit that into, but otherwise, I think I'm flexible. We'll make it work, so.
And I'm also pretty flexible, except for like your Wednesday, like tomorrow morning, we have a highway committee meeting. You know, so that would take that out, and afternoons like wouldn't work for me at all,
Okay.
you know, but any other time I'm pretty flexible.
Mr. Chairman, do I recall we had a conflict with payroll? And
Payroll was another issue. Monday mornings is when we typically have to have all of that done.
okay, that is Mondays. All right.
Is there, we're a later day time on Tuesdays? Make sense for you, Monica?
I could do afternoon, but that
doesn't work for
conflicts with Gary.
Monica, do you have a preferred time since we're adjusting our schedule around your teaching?
I mean, I don't teach on Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. Those are generally pretty open for me.
About Wednesdays?
That's
Oh, right, you just said
highway.
that.
What's the highway committee schedule?
I believe it's the second Wednesday of the month. And that meets only once a month.
Right.
You know,
What
so
time?
8 o'clock, which
8.
is really tough, but
Yeah.
but if a guy could like you have it the opposite Wednesday, it'd work fine too. You know, like the third Wednesday start there, or like the first Wednesday.
First and third?
Yeah, something like that would work for me.
Well, it might be the
First and
option, huh?
Third?
Go first and third Wednesday at 8:30 still?
First and third.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Trying to think of that. that isn't as convenient for county board decisions probably, but not bad. We couldn't get something to the executive committee like we can right now pretty quickly.
Right.
Anyway, that's not that big a deal. So does. We're okay?
It would be like the sixth of September and then exec doesn't meet till the 13th, so.
It's true.
Hold
Yep.
out to not send the packet out.
Not the next day, anyway, yeah. Okay, so
First and third.
first and third Wednesday, 8:30. Starting in September,
Starting the sixth or whatever that date is.
whatever our first meeting date is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's everything. Anybody else have any announcements or comments? All right, then we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.